worldview. If your worldview is there is a hope in the future for America, for yourself, for your family, then you're going to get out there. I have no problem getting up in the morning. My problem is waking up at 3, too excited to even think about going back to, and I'm at my computer. I might send you an email tomorrow, David, at 4 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't mean I'm sick or something. It's just I'm too excited to stay in the bed. And, I'm going to bed at 9 o'clock, so that's why I can pop up at 3 or 4 o'clock. But, not to make it sound, because entrepreneurship is one of the hardest things on the planet to do, because it is risk. And it's easy to make huge mistakes. So it is, more than just a little scary, some pieces of it, but it's how you're made. Some people, entrepreneurship, it can be taught a bit, but it's more how you're made.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Hey everyone, welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. Have you ever noticed how the things we depend on most are usually the things we think about least? Take fertilizer. Not exactly the kind of thing that makes headlines or comes up in conversation, but without it, farmers would have a hard time growing food. Now, here's the part most people don't realize. Fertilizer is not just dirt and nutrients, it's energy. It starts with natural gas, the same clean, reliable fuel that keeps your house warm in the winter and your grill hot also helps you grow your food. But do you know where the farmers get the fertilizer? Let's get into that with our guest today, who is Perry Babb, and he is the CEO of Keystate Energy. Perry, welcome to the podcast.
Terrific to be here, David. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, thanks so much. I'm interested to talk about fertilizer and other things, but to start off with, you didn't really start your career in the energy industry. Tell us a little bit about what you did before.
Well, actually, I grew up on a peanut farm, and my earliest ambitions was to be a farmer. I ended up getting a long way from that. Sociologist by training, ended up doing about 25 years of international humanitarian aid, missions type work, mostly in Eastern Europe.
Wow.
After the collapse of Soviet communism. But those years of experience were terrific training for project development on a very large scale. Because when you go into a country that's in a situation like how in Eastern Europe after communism, you have to think so broadly to help. You can't just think about food. You have to think about, can you actually get it there? Can you get across the border? And if you're going to create jobs, you have to think about everything from, do you have a road? Do you have fuel? Can you get a license, a feedstock, et cetera? So that was great training. So I actually started my first business by accident in 2005, found out the same skills applied as doing nonprofit work, and eventually found myself in the middle of the Marcellus Revolution because we lived in College, Pennsylvania at that time, and got involved in all different types of marketing initially related to natural gas, eventually renewable natural gas as well as fossil natural gas, CNG, LNG, fuel and infrastructure. And really that led me to this project where my now partners had 7,000 acre stranded gas assets. So that means there's natural gas there, but it's not a connection to the gas transmission system. And so they asked me to help them to figure out how to monetize the gas. And then you fast forward 8 years, essentially we developed an advanced manufacturing approach where you integrate natural gas extraction on site, make a product with it, generate your own power on site also. And that integration gives you a super competitive advantage. Plus it uses natural gas that otherwise might not get used in Appalachia in this case.
Yeah. So I want to go back to your time in Eastern Europe to start off with, because I think it's pretty fascinating that you worked in nonprofit mission type work in a pretty darn interesting place. So was this in the 90s in Eastern Europe?
Correct. Initially Romania, which again, there's an ag connection there. Romania used to be known as the breadbasket of Europe.
Well,
but under communism, they couldn't even feed themselves. And, topsoil, that would be 8-10 feet deep of rich topsoil. But it really showed me how if you don't have a free market economy, even a place such rich in potential can't even feed its own self. And so that again applied to the U.S. Ironically, we have all this natural gas, but we are a net importer of fertilizer. That's complete insanity. And then particularly in the East Coast, there's a 15-state region without any nitrogen fertilizer production. And in the last 12 months, nearly 100% of that has come from Russia. Well, that's completely irrational given politics, geopolitics, et cetera. And so that's part of the reason that led us to develop a fertilizer facility in Pennsylvania is because that need on the East Coast, that dependence on international imports. And then we basically landed in the middle of a fertilizer crisis right now where input prices are super high, almost historic high, fertilizer and the like, finance costs. But commodity prices are almost at historic lows. And we're just about at the 1980s, what the farming community says, in crisis around farming right now. So, I've got a family history, personal and business motivation behind this of, that the natural gas that we have is a huge resource. This is just another example how we can use it. And if anything, we should be exporting natural gas as fertilizer, along with export natural gas in a liquefied form, et cetera. We have all the potential to do that for sure.
So take me through a little bit of the science here. Like what role does natural gas play in fertilizer?
Well, think about it as the feedstock, which you would need to make the fertilizer product. And that that methane, MH4, that mostly is what natural gas is, you separate the H from the C, and you take the C and you recycle most of that C, and you use that into the fertilizer manufacturing itself. But you take the C, the hydrogen, the H, and you combine it with nitrogen, which is simply drawn from the air. And the nitrogen and the hydrogen makes NH3, ammonia, which is one of the miracle innovations of humankind. There's accepted statistics that if we didn't have this synthetic nitrogen, if we had depended on animal fertilizer, animal manure for fertilizer, nitrogen fertilizer, that we couldn't support half the world's population right now today. So it's a miracle. When it was innovated in Europe in the early part of the 19th century, 20th century, it was called the miracle of bread from air, how you could pull nitrogen from the air, combine it with this hydrogen and make ammonia. And so then you take the ammonia and you combine it back in, you synthesize it with CO2 that you just captured, the C, to make urea, and in our case, urea that's granulated, and also the urea ammonium nitrate, which is a combination specialized way to carry the nitrogen efficiently. So we'll make about 1 million tons of ammonia and urea-related products from this new facility in north central Pennsylvania.
Wow, that's fabulous. We talked to a lot of people from Pennsylvania. It really is. There's a lot of cool energy stuff going on in Pennsylvania for sure. So you said that America's not kind of a fertilizer independent, let's say. Like we could be, but we're not, right? And we're importing fertilizer, which seems so non-commonsensical. Why are there so many states and why are there portions of the country that are not able to produce their own fertilizer and are forced to import?
Well, recall of when LNG was an import to the U.S. not that long ago, basically right before the Marcellus, the fracking, horizontal drilling revolution, we had terminals that were importing LNG from the Middle East. And we were on a course where we didn't have enough natural gas nearly to supply our own needs for heating, et cetera. But with the miracle of horizontal drilling and completing wells, this ocean of natural gas was opened up to us. So from 2005 until the next 10 years, 15 years, there were many ammonia, urea fertilizer plants built in the Gulf Coast through the middle part of the state, the Corn Belt, or U.S. states, Corn Belt, which took us from, needing almost all of our fertilizer imported to a minority amount. But still now the minority amount, we use about 14 million tons a year, but we're still importing 2 million tons a year. Well, that's 7%. But that's where the price whacks American farmers, because that 7% is a global commodity anyway. But because we don't have adequate supply domestically, whatever's happening geopolitically, it pulls our fertilizer production out the Gulf to Europe or other places through the St. Lawrence Seaway to Europe and other places, which then depletes supply in the middle part of the state. And that's exactly the dynamics the last at least 5 years. And then, interestingly, we have tariffs on different countries from different levels, and some that have been supplying nitrogen fertilizer to us. But ironically, the country we don't have tariffs on for fertilizer imports to the U.S. is Russia. And so Russia has rushed in the last several years to take additional market share. So 25% of our imports are coming from Russia across the country. And like I said, almost 100% coming into the East Coast is from Russia. And so the reason there's not production, ammonia, hydrogen, urea production, nitrogen fertilizer production on the East Coast, it's a much smaller market there than the Corn Belt in the middle part of the country. And, it's a magical thing when you have competition, but you have to have innovation to have competition. And so Appalachia is the perfect scenario for that. So we're producing our gas and providing it to the project at cost of production. That's a huge competitive advantage. So we make no money off the gas. We make it off the production of the fertilizer, which is right there next to us. So we avoid transportation costs, et cetera, plus our proximity to that market. Well, those two innovations will break open the market in the East and be market disruptive because it's new supply. It'll rebalance cost. And, there'll be some fertilizer that'll still go out to Europe and other parts. Fine, terrific. But we have more supply for domestic uses, along with being able to begin to service more of the global market. And then the next step is an overabundance of our own supply. So we're an exporter. It's laughable that we're not an exporter of fertilizer. And in countries that are underdeveloped, the quality of the fertilizer being brought into the U.S. is horrible. I've heard horror stories of what they find in some of the fertilizer containers from China, from Russia, from Egypt. And,
really, like what?
Oh, shoes, human remains. It's just it's supposed to be in a not in a dusty state. It's supposed to have some. It's granulated so that you can move it without it being broken down in that dust. Well, that's a main standard of quality. Plus, the emission standards in those countries producing this is completely laughable compared to what we have. It makes you cry compared to what we have here, that we have to maintain water quality and all this air quality. So the U.S., just like it's leapfrogging to be the global supplier of LNG, we can easily do that just with Appalachian natural gas, much less with other natural gas basins around the country. But Appalachia is poised because we can concentrate a supply directly of gas, extract it, supply directly to a facility. And we've got, the Ohio River. We've got lots of rail asset from the coal days, and we can move this right to the coast. And essentially, the storage facilities on the East Coast that have been used for import, they're going to be used for export in the next 10 years.
Wow. And
that's the way it should be. So it's just another way to export our natural gas resource, but in the form of nitrogen fertilizer.
Yeah, that's fabulous, because we have talked to some guests about, the growth in natural gas and the opportunity for America to export, which just seems so, again, commonsensical when it comes to our national security. And you're talking about a whole nother form here. It seems like at first we need to take care of our own home and make sure that we're not importing. And then, we can probably at the same time, we can really start exporting, which totally, it seems like there's such great opportunity for growth here. Do you find that with the Trump administration coming in, has that changed any of the landscape and the way you look at the future here in this industry?
Well, we are a sad example of what petrochemical industry has gone through the last 6 years, 5 years. So we were a fertilizer project, finished our first level of engineering. The new administration comes in, and we realize that it is going to be very challenging for us to get a permit to make hydrogen from natural gas, emit that CO2, just like it's been done for 150 years. And then also there was going to be a regime of new requirements, a regime of tax incentives that if we didn't meet those requirements, we weren't going to be able to build the facility, or we'd be obsolete when we built it, or there would be incentives that we weren't taking advantage of, that we would be uncompetitive if somebody else was getting $3 a kilogram of hydrogen and we were getting no dollars a kilogram in tax credit for hydrogen. So we spent 4 years innovating. Okay, that's the government that was elected. So we innovated some really amazing approaches, engineering, where we were producing a very low carbon fertilizer product nobody else in the world could create from a huge scale with a carbon intensity that we had. And it was expensive. Took 4 years of navigating those regulations. We were accepted a part of one of the hydrogen hubs with those innovations. We eliminated all upstream emissions, and we're still going to do that one because it's a captive gas supply. We can monitor every inch of that production, and using just some innovations and some conventional energy standard practice now, we can monitor it 24/7. You can see exactly the emissions profile, and the mythology around the emissions around natural gas extraction will be exploded. It's ridiculous, but we have verifiable data. We didn't need to preach that sermon, but we saw those. But a lot of those innovations, there wasn't a business case for them. So you couldn't get a green premium, as they call it. So I was in a meeting with DOE under the last administration. I said, wait a minute, you're going to pay me to make the stuff, and you're going to pay that guy to buy the stuff. What's wrong with this? And we can displace diesel fuel in trucks with our hydrogen, but it costs as much to liquefy that hydrogen to put it on the truck than it did to make it. It just wasn't a business case. So about a year and a half ago, before the election, et cetera, we started to pivot back to fertilizer. That was the only business case. And we've kept a lot of the lower carbon product. And if there's a market in Europe for a lower carbon product, we want to meet it. All right.
Yeah.
But we had to shelve some of the innovation because this wasn't a business case. So now the new administration comes in. What's their priority? Domestic production, supply chains that are reliable. Don't depend on people who don't like us for essential products. Along with the current crisis in fertilizer with farmers, we landed right in the middle of that. So we're the happiest people in 2025 because we landed right in the middle of the new administration's priorities, and that maximizes what we've done and innovated, and we can help farmers on the East Coast. If tariffs are placed on Russian fertilizer, the price implications will be dramatic. If secondary tariffs are applied, because Russia by far is the largest exporter of nitrogen globally, if there's secondary tariffs, the global price is going to go through the roof. So farmers will support tariffs, but they just didn't know that help is on the way, that geopolitics won't keep them from making a profit next year. I've had farmers to tell me a few weeks ago from a certain region in Pennsylvania, we planning not to make any money this year because of the price of fertilizer. And that is obscene.
Wow.
When we have all this natural gas right under Pennsylvania, you can see I can preach about this. I don't need to preach it to you, but I'm passionate about it because it's part of William Penn's vision for Pennsylvania. The ground continues to produce from Pennsylvania for our freedom. And that's exactly what this is about.
Yeah, I mean, it's a security issue. It really is. And we have a real opportunity to enhance our national security. One last technical question, not technical, but the thing about the industry, we've had a lot of guests on talking about the needs for more energy based on data centers and just how our appetite for energy and data continue to grow. So what role would you see natural gas and natural gas production plants playing in relation to data centers?
That is a terrific question. So two things to that. One, any kind of large scale manufacturing it says, especially in Appalachia, the Permian area in Texas, they have to think about generating their own power. There's going to be so much demand on the grid. Forget it. Just generate your own power. If you've got natural gas, generate power. Maybe you can put some back into the grid, like the president's been recommending to the data centers. So that's number one. In our case, we're going to generate our own power, and we probably could get access, but like our finance guy says, there could be curtailment in the future. And so it's much better for us to build our own power generation. That's number one. Number two, the prices that are high in the Northeast, California, some parts of Pennsylvania, it's not because of data centers. We just started to build the data centers. It's because the complete insanity around renewables that have been forced into the grid. Well, you've got this renewable that it doesn't cost you anything at noon on a sunny day to make power. But at midnight on that same day, you've got to have a whole nother gas-fired power plant or coal plant there ready to operate, because this only gives you, in Pennsylvania, 24% of the time. That's a good ratio, that solar field or wind is going to provide you 100% of its demand capacity. It's just insanity. That's what's driven the price up. Now, in the future, like the PUC in the last few days, Pennsylvania has announced rules that large user, the data center, has to pay for what it's going to be pulling from the grid and improvements. Oh, that's the same thing. That's the same way to do it. But politicians that are blaming high prices of electricity now on data centers, it's a bald-faced lie, because they're just being built now. Their demand is not even starting where it's going. But it will drive prices up if we don't have those data centers. Yeah, they need to pay for their own infrastructure. And maybe on large scale, you pool it, the government's involved some. But that we've got plenty of gas. That's the main thing. If we didn't have enough gas, forget it. It's over. I mean, we need to learn Chinese. I mean, it's over. I've been and worked in communist and former communist countries. This is a life and death struggle for America. And if I wasn't making fertilizer right now, I would definitely be in the data center development somehow, power for the data center somehow, because it's such a critical issue for.
Hey, I want to jump back to the earliest part of our conversation and kind of go back to your work you did, decades ago in Eastern Europe. So it seems to me like you saw an opportunity. So you're working in nonprofits, and then you see an opportunity in the for-profit field and made, seems like a pretty big switch. I know that so I'm really interested to hear, if there's people out there who midlife, early in life are thinking about, hey, do I have the courage to make a change? Or, I've been on this path, but now I'm going to go in this different path. I mean, you've had a whole different career. Can you kind of talk about, like, as you reflect back on that, like, what were you thinking at the time? Were you scared, worried? I mean, how did you kind of think about that?
Well, even in the nonprofit days, I didn't understand it, but I was a serial entrepreneur. And the things that we did in around nonprofit stuff was very innovative, and innovative for the time. So it was really only applying the same skills in another realm. And, I had to be good at communication. I had to be good at dealing with civil government authorities. We had to think broadly about what the need was and what the entity was called Strategic Global Alliance. And if it wasn't strategic, meaning strategic for that country or a large region or for a wide set of people, health or something like that, we focus on those type of things. So it's the same with nitrogen production. It's essential, it's strategic for U.S. national security. So it sounds like a huge leap, but I mean, not to preach further, but God is very creative, and He's made His creation very creative, and He's put something in us to create. Whether it's a guy that does woodwork or the lady that builds her own company or bakes and builds her own company at the same time and, builds apps and whatever else. Well, there's something in us to conquer and subdue, to accomplish. And so it's really not as big a leap. Like the skills that I learned during those days, like I learned to journal in those days. And I've still basically since 1977 barely missed a day that I didn't journal. And so what did I journal? I journaled, this is what happened yesterday. So it ends up being, this is what mistake I made. This is what I learned. Don't do that again. And then I would make, okay, what's next? Then I would make a list about what I thought next. So what was I doing? I didn't even know what I was doing really, but those are basic business and entrepreneurial skills, essential. And the opportunity, whenever I talk to a young entrepreneur, an old one, they're the same, young or old. Most companies are still created by people 35 to 55 rather than 25. It's been that way all along. But it's those same skills. Now, as far as what we were thinking, I'm sure that my wife has a gold medal that she'll receive in heaven because we've gone, 40 some years now, we've gone through all these gyrations and projects and types of things. But, of course they were scary. And of course they were, but, at the same time, what's your whole worldview? If your worldview is there is a hope in the future for America, for yourself, for your family, then you're going to get out there. I have no problem getting up in the morning. My problem is waking up at 3, too excited to even think about going back and I'm at my computer. I might send you an email tomorrow, David, at 4:00 in the morning. It doesn't mean I'm sick or something. It's just, I'm too excited to stay in the bed. And, I'm going to bed at 9:00, so that's why I can pop up at 3 or 4 o'clock. But, not to make it sound, because entrepreneurship is one of the hardest things on the planet to do because there is risk and it's easy to make huge mistakes. So it is, more than just a little scary, some pieces of it, but it's how you're made. Some people, entrepreneurship, it can be taught a bit, but it's more how you're made. And it's a horrible thing when you force somebody to be entrepreneurial and take risk when they're not designed that way. It's it's not right. And it can really damage them and probably be unproductive.
Well, Perry, I'm so glad that you took the risk and you can share with us your insights about natural gas and fertilizer and really how essential this is the national security. But also super excited for your enthusiasm. It's just inspirational. And I never send emails at 4 a.m. I'm like, I roll over and I can't wait to get to that spot where I'm so excited. I'll think of podcast episodes and questions. But I really appreciate you sharing your life story with us and getting us excited about natural gas and fertilizer.
Well, I appreciate what you guys do. I follow it. America's best days, with God's grace, are ahead still. There's some great things going on in America that we should be really happy and excited about.
Agreed.
And I definitely am. And I'm honored to be a part of the work that I'm doing right now. And, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I hope I didn't get too long-winded there. And I'm sure you can edit it out. So we're okay.
You're wonderful. We'll just go along for it. That's fabulous. Perry, we really appreciate you being on and sharing your wisdom.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Thanks. Well, hey, folks, if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.